The inner world. What's inside you? Some listeners are being literal right now and picturing what their guts look like. That's okay. But what I mean is, what is the world inside of you? To use a pop culture reference, in the television show Stranger Things, the characters have a shared inner yet external world called the Upside Down. This is a world that scares us, mostly because this is a show about child abuse. Not just child abuse, but the powers we develop as a response to what has happened to us externally. Survivors of any type of trauma develop powers. In the book Kundalini, the Mother Power, Sri Chinmoy talks about Anahata, or the heart chakra, and says, "The power of the heart center is unbelievable. A seeker with mastery over the Anahata center has free access to both the visible and the invisible worlds. Time surrenders to them, space surrenders to them. If they use this center, they can travel to any part of the world in a few seconds in their subtle body. But if they do this, they take a great risk." Your inner world controls how you're able to travel to other worlds. The moon rules Cancer, which is always seen as the giving sign, the nurturer. Notice they are also the sign people say to watch out for when you wrong them. I'd say that goes for any sign, but why do people fear this water sign? Maybe because they're scared of their own inner world and aware that there are unseen worlds in others. Maybe it's the tsunami effect of emotions that they fear. Imagine just being completely consumed by water. Terrifying. But this is the water element. Water on Earth is ruled by the moon. The moon also rules menstruation. What a powerful thing. Ever sit on a beach at night? I may have asked you a similar question in the episode about Pluto and Scorpio, because we're talking about the depths of water. Looking into the ocean, looking at the moon, pulling the ocean. Remember when we had what they called the Great American Eclipse over the summer? Remember everyone, it was all this fanfare, August 21st. And we thought, oh, what's going to happen? It's in Leo, and what's going to go on? And, the suspicion is that when an eclipse like that happens, you stay in your house so you don't get bad luck. You don't look at it, right? It could burn your eyes. And everyone thought it was ridiculous, the suspicion surrounding eclipses like this. But did you notice the hurricane cycles were particularly destructive this year? And that's the moon. It controls the water. When the inner world is chaotic, the exterior world feels it. And the key word is feels. So I'll ask you again, what's inside you? This is Pure Grease with Underwater Spaceship.
This is an original known as Underwater Spaceship. We're going to take you on a journey on this one. By
Can't wait.
Charlie Zoller.
Take us there, Charlie.
The year is 3597. Sea crabs have become sentient. The human mind has been awoken. This is the journey of one man and his donkey. Go there with us.
Have you ever heard of J. Krishnamurti's inward revolution? Krishnamurti argues the way we bring about radical change is to listen to our intuition. Let me read you a passage of the book. Now in chapter 8, Krishnamurti says, "Can there be an inward and therefore outward revolution?" First of all, this is quoting from the book, I would like to say how important it is to find out for oneself what learning is, because apparently all of you have come here to learn what somebody else has to say. To find out, one must obviously listen, and it is one of the most difficult things to do. It's quite an art, because most of us have our own opinions, conclusions, points of view, dogmatic beliefs and assertions, our own peculiar little experiences, our knowledge, which will obviously prevent us from actually listening to another. All these opinions and judgments will crowd and hinder the act of listening. Can you listen without any conclusion, without any comparison and judgment? Just listen as you would listen to music, to something that you feel you really love. Then you listen not only with your mind and with your intellect, but also with your heart, not sentimentally, which is rather terrible, or emotionally, but with care, objectivity, sanely, listen with attention to find out. In many activist communities, this is a big deal. And let me continue with what Krishnamurti says in chapter 11. How do you look at yourself and at the world? Krishnamurti says, I think one should have a good look not only at the outside, at what's going on in the world, but also more rigorously at ourselves. To look clearly without any distortion, there must be a quality of perception, a quality of mind that sees without resisting, without prejudice, without being caught in any particular formula, merely observing and perceiving what is actually, not theoretically. We shall come upon what truth is, and not upon speculative ideas about truth. We will not accept or reject what others say that is truth, but see for ourselves very clearly what is. Therefore, it is very important to understand the word perception. Does this philosophy bother you? I have to admit, because of my training in the academic world, this philosophy can seem too easy. But think of organizations. Have you ever been part of one? I'm sure you have. What happens when it gets torn down from the inside? Talking about when you form a group because you think you're like-minded and you find out that the world doesn't work like that. I mean, you may be somewhat like-minded, but not everyone thinks exactly the same. And there are also, aside from fundamental misunderstandings, people who sometimes are not willing to go within to resolve those misunderstandings. So think of the group as the interior world for a moment. Now, I know the interior world is also within you, but think about the group as an interior world relating to society. So related to society, this group is this interior world. And then think of the exterior piece. What gets done out in the world by this organization. So what happens if this organization falls apart? What gets done? Nothing. I've seen so much misunderstanding in groups where exactly that happens. Nothing gets done. And then who cares if you even formed a group, because they're just fighting each other. But see, this is where I also found most of the work gets done. You think, oh, I've joined this group, so everyone thinks the same as me, right? I mentioned this before. But no, that's outrageous. Everyone in the group has their own life experience they're bringing to the mix. And it's only if you come to terms with your own identity and place in the group that you'll make any difference at all. That work is within yourself, not with other people. It has to do with changing your own thinking to change society. This calls to mind an essay by Joey Lusk in the collection Are All the Women Still White? Rethinking Race and Expanding Feminisms. This book, just to provide a little background information, provides a contemporary update to all the women are white, all the blacks are men, but some of us are brave. And also This Bridge Called My Back. So both of those together, this book, Are All the Women Still White, was a contemporary response to those two books and a follow-up in the digital age and the age of, hacktivism and all of that. And so more than 30 years have passed since both of those older books were published. And in that time, we've recognized the importance of intersectionality and differences and transnational feminism. And it's all very complex. We're talking about not just intimate partner violence, but also the prison system, mass incarceration, and trans identities, inclusive pedagogies, So what this book is trying to do, and what contemporary activists are trying to do, of course, is to place the most marginalized in the center of the discussion. But what are the objectives, or I should say, what are the obstacles to doing that? Now, in this essay called Note to Self, Lusk deals with her own unconscious racism. And now this is not the same as overt racism, right? And a tendency for white women to place themselves as the center of attention in feminist debates. She also explains that the search and the interior work is never over. She's always searching within herself for barriers to the world she says she wants, that she claims she wants, a better world for all, equity for all. I'll never forget the style of the essay. It's stylized like a journal entry, and it starts out, "Dear younger me, feminism does not exist to comfort you." And now, for our podcast's sake, that sentence seems significant because when we deal with the energies of the moon, right, the Cancerian energies, we're dealing with our own ability to comfort ourselves and our need to be comforted by others. So let's go on. She says, if you're lucky, every feminist you meet will challenge you. And oh my God, the hardest part of activism and doing anything out in the world is learning that you can also oppress other people. Yes, you. And I have to say, it can be the most terrifying revelation you can come to. That you, who maybe has been the victim of suffering, can also cause suffering in others. If you're not careful, instead of taking actions to change, you can wallow in self-pity. And Joey Lusk would say, you are up against yourself foremost. So when thinking about J. Krishnamurti and the messages in that text, in Word Revolution, and then taking that into the world of activism, it's not so far off from what really needs to happen in activist communities, that you can, in fact, do revolutionary things if you're looking inside of yourself. And Lusk also says that privilege is defined by the fact that no matter what your social location or invisible facets of difference, you will always have the choice to remain silent and dwell in the comfort of that refuge. Even if you never remained silent, you would still have the choice. And that's what privilege is about. It's about choices. And there are some people who don't have choices that are silenced, who are silenced. And that's what power is. You have to recognize that power is the ability to make choices. Now, who out there knows a person who just likes to sit in emotions? Now, I have to be careful here. I'm not discounting emotions because people make fun of Aquarius for intellectualizing everything. So I guess if I'm being honest, emotions can be scary. They can scare me, especially. But the reason for this is because sometimes emotions can be so powerful that they can take over your whole life. And if they're unconscious, they can even take over your whole body and your health. Your emotions can literally kill you. Some people would say emotions are our whole lives, that every action has an emotional response behind it. What do you think, listener? This is Audiobinger with Catching Feelings. In medical astrology, the moon rules the stomach, digestive system, female organs, and lymphatic system. And Cancer would rule the chest, breasts, stomach. So let's switch gears for a moment and then get back into the medical astrology. What are the valuable messages of sadness and depression? I don't mean to completely conflate the two because they're different experiences. Sadness can be passing. It comes about when a significant event takes place. Depression can be a constant state of hopelessness that never lets up. But what can both of these teach us? Mantak, Chia, and Dena Saxer in Emotional Wisdom tell us, painful emotions are messages from our soul, telling us that we are out of balance and that something needs attending to. So, how do we deal with these difficult emotions, these difficult states? And what is our soul saying when we feel sad, depressed, lonely? Like I started to mention before, sadness can be a natural response to significant loss. The end of a close relationship, that can make you feel very sad. And certainly the death of a parent or a child, a partner, a pet, a close friend can make us absolutely despondent. And it's healthy to let ourselves feel these emotions deeply and express our sorrow, because if we ignore, deny, or repress our grief, it embeds itself in our bodies. Specifically, in Emotional Wisdom, the book I was just telling you about, the author suggests that sadness embeds itself in our lungs, our large intestine, and other places, and it causes these places to malfunction. So eventually, we must let go of sorrow and move beyond mourning, and we have to accept what's happened. The authors say that in a Taoist view, every challenge, every crisis is an opportunity for learning, to grow wiser, kinder, and stronger. We could see it all as a shifting of energy. If that's too out there for you, consider this. Life is finite. So what should we do? Should we dwell on sorrow? Or should we concentrate on what's truly important to us and grow? This is Staiff featuring Klub with Dancing on the Moon. not to say I don't plan these episodes, but I don't quite plan, quote unquote, these episodes. I learn a lot. I learn as much as I can. That's been me throughout my whole life, just trying to learn. And I acknowledge spirits that are all around us all the time, who also urge us to talk about different things, to think about certain things. You run into a situation, it triggers a memory, and there you are talking about something that maybe somebody needs to hear. So it's not all me. I also channel. Now, there are people who pose as channelers and gurus who use the idea of channeling for their own power, which is probably easy to do, but my message in every community I've ever been a part of is to become your own guru. This is not just in New Agey syncretism groups. This is also in regards to publishing and teaching. I do really believe that you can be your own guru. Now, how can we heal ourselves? To go back to that power, when emotions are overtaking us, and when the upside down, so to speak, and to use the Stranger Things reference again, takes over. People in holistic communities hold that when you want to heal from toxicity in the body, you monitor what goes into it. You cleanse. This goes for what entertainment you watch, music you listen to, people you interact with. There's a regulation that needs to happen for healing, and if you want to master your emotions. I did not say ignore emotions. I did not say get rid of emotions. I said master emotions. I did not say when they come up, shut them down and compartmentalize your emotions. I said master emotions. Think of, for instance, the holistic cure for cancer. I question why it was called cancer because it's said to be caused metaphysically by the emotions and negativity that we hold in our body, negative emotional states. I think of the word despondency. It's said that lymphoma, a disease of the blood, is caused by lack of joy in your life. I like to think about this. How about we think about it while listening to Glass Boy with MT? How do you nurture yourself? The moon, after all, is a nurturing planet. Associated tarot cards with the moon are the High Priestess and the Chariot, but I'm just going to talk about the High Priestess right now. And upright, the High Priestess can signal intuition, higher powers, mystery, the subconscious mind, and reversed, it can represent hidden agendas and not listening to your inner self. Do you know about your subconscious mind and how it works, how to access it? Do you create? Do you create music or art or writing or any of the things that we talked about in my Neptune episode where I talked about creativity? What about dreams? You have to connect with your dreams. Symbols in everyday life, synchronicity, serendipity. Maybe you feel like your life is out of balance and you don't know how to get back to that. But you can. Because the most revolutionary thing that you can do right now, without anything, without any books, nothing to help you, is to listen to yourself. Have you pushed yourself aside so much that you just don't feel like you have anything else to offer? That you don't have any answers? I'm not talking about the ones that come through logic and intellect, because they can be coping mechanisms too. You're the High Priestess in that tarot card. Recognize that. Cancer also has to do with comforts. How do you deal with the overwhelming power of your intuition? Are there ways that you dull this intuitive power? This is said with complete non-judgment because I know that we all do it and we all have done it. How do you control your body? Since every body is a good body in the eyes of God, why? Because God is inside of us, so if it's our body, it's a good body. Do you find comfort in food? This is something that's associated with the Cancerian attitude. The Cancerian ethos is comfort food. Everyone can find comfort in food. You know why? Because the stomach has been called the second brain. Where do you think the phrase gut feelings comes from? How many times have you heard, go with your gut? It's no coincidence. Not only that, but when you eat, it releases chemicals like serotonin. I'm sure you recognize that as being a feel-good chemical that makes you happy. So it makes sense that people eat to feel good. But not everyone realizes the tie between eating and intuition. It's interesting. Just something to think about. Food is a way that we can nurture ourselves. We think about the worst thing in the world being that people go hungry. And there's a reason for that. Because we need to be nurtured. And the first step to doing that is nurturing yourself. It's a matter of survival. So how do you nurture yourself? What behaviors do you recognize as nurturing? And most of all, do you trust yourself?
Has the mission been completed? You know that I have the greatest enthusiasm for it.